Hey guys, this is Totally and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG. Specifically today we're going to be focusing on building some menus. This is take two. Tried streaming a moment ago and ran into some technical difficulties, but I think I've sorted those out. So now it's just a matter of, trying again. So it's been a while since we've streamed, a little rusty. But we're going to just jump into it and try and go. And hopefully this time I don't run into as many small issues. Primarily the thing that I was trying to show was the work we were doing in between. Before we jump into code and stuff, I kind of just wanted to show where we're at with the project in general. So when we last left off, I was working on like dungeon generation, I think. Trying to get it so that we could build a map and kind of read that map in from like a TSV or from a Google spreadsheet essentially, and then have that data generate an environment that the character could move around in. Since the last time we've streamed, I spent a bunch of time on that, and I've got it now to the point where we are generating this map. There is collision, so the character can't walk through the walls anymore. This character was made by Drixie. There's a more recent version that's going to be coming later, but for now we have this one which has just the 8 direction facings, and we're just using that, and it slides across the ground. We'll add animations at a later point. We also have this simple little AI blob that can chase the enemy or chase the player, and when the enemy reaches the player, it'll load into combat. And when we basically win or lose this battle, we'll go back to that dungeon scene. But I'm not going to go through the whole battle system because honestly nothing's really changed there since the last time we streamed. So in terms of the dungeon generation stuff, just to quickly show that off, I'd like to go deeper into that later. I still want to do more work on it primarily, so I don't want to dive too far down that rabbit hole, because again I think it needs to be cleaned up before I kind of talk and show about it on a stream. But essentially what we have is we can set a file name and just hit basically load. There's like a 2-step process where we generate like the first version, which is like just the temp, and the temp has all the tiles all in one area. And we were originally writing a system where we could try and place each tile and determine what type of tile it should be in the last stream. I since realized that like Unity has these things called rule tiles, so every single one of these tile pieces basically look at their neighbors and kind of figure out what they should be based off of their neighbors. So if we were to grab some floor and start painting it, you can see that the walls kind of snap. Like I'm removing this wall here, but the wall behind it like kind of changes its tile type. Instead of being a like right facing wall, it becomes like a corner tile because of its floor in front of it. So we have these rule tiles that kind of change how things work a little bit, and then this first run is with a whole bunch of rule tiles that generate what the environment looks like. And then the second pass, because we actually need to have different depths as we go up and down levels. Again, I'll go into it more detailed at a later point, but we generate a final pass which generates a floor section, which I can turn off that floor section, and you can see this is without the floor. This is the collision stuff. If we turn that off, we would no longer have any collision. This is the wall layer. This is like the water layer. So we can turn each of those sections off essentially, but we build it all together as one temp version, and then we, from that temp version, construct a bunch of individual sections. Hello, Tobias Random? Wow, I still don't know how to read. Cool, good. Glad some things never change. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, so we've got this tile generation stuff, just to show a little bit of how that actually looks in data. So essentially I boiled it down to this, where we have a tile type in the first value, and the second value is how high it is essentially. And if we look down like here, it's actually like floor 1, this is ramp at level 1, then floor 2, then ramp at level 2, then floor 3, and then this water has that same kind of pattern. We don't specify walls because we basically just almost like if you can kind of think about it like a Minecraft, kind of like we build all of the walls out, and then we replace walls with floors and waters, which kind of carves out the actual floor plan of the dungeon. But we start by generating all walls, and then we use that data to kind of like carve out the section. And here you can see that exact same environment where I was looking at floor 1, ramp 1, floor 2, ramp 2, floor 3. And so I kind of have this upward trajectory. And then obviously the walls are 3 levels high when we generate that base as well. So that's kind of what that's like. And just to kind of show quickly how some of that stuff's working, if I was to say change this to be floors, change this to be water with a bit of quick copy and pasting, and then download TSV, and then what? Google, did you just download it without... Really? This is the part that breaks? Google? What is happening? Oh, is this because... Okay, I fixed it. I fixed it. Google's freaking out because I hit download a bunch of times. But if we hit file, download, TSV, and then we slam this in here as sample map sheet 8 as the example, hit save, and then we come into here and say, hey, I'd like to load 8 instead of 9. We'll clear everything, generate all together, and now we can see that there's no longer a floor here, but there is one here. So pretty quick and easy to generate new environments and maps, which I'm pretty stoked about. I think that that's all working pretty well. Yeah, so again, there are improvements that need to be made. The fact that like the I'm trying to get rid of the lines, but I can't. The fact that like this wall is kind of showing in front of this other tile that it shouldn't be, like there are issues. You can see here there's like a bit of wall piece that's sticking out. This should really be a wall tile that has like 4 sides, but we don't have that type of art yet, so we need to do we have to do something to make that that art. There's just some weirdness with some of these like wall placements essentially. So more that needs to be done here, but pretty happy with this overall. And so the next thing that I've been moving on to, and what I'd like to continue working on in this stream specifically, is UI building. So let's go into front-end sandbox. So I spent a bunch of time kind of playing around with and getting kind of a front-end system more than just like a couple screens, because it was kind of, I was running into issues where I wanted this to be a very flexible system where we could make screens very quickly, but I kept running into issues when trying to build that system. And what I have now isn't perfect, but it's close enough that I think we could jump in today and start building out some of the different screens that I want. I should have mock-ups in the project, which I do, which I've been kind of designing for a little while. So if we open up some of these, we can kind of see like some really rudimentary screens that I want to build. So like this would be the first screen you'd hit when you open it from the main game. This would be like the equipment screen where you're selecting who to equip on. This would be after you had clicked on I want to equip Ward. It would, go in and let you choose which items you want to equip. No, this is the screen where after you click Ward, you would click which slot you want to change, and then once you click on the slot, then this would be like, hey, I want to choose a new weapon or a new sword. And then that's kind of like a pretty basic screen. This is a more complicated one to do with like skill progression. This one has to do with like equipping abilities and stuff. Kind of a basic look of what the HUD for when you're walking around in the dungeon might look like. Item use screen, the different types of healing ability screens. Point is that I want to start mocking out some of these screens in the flow, so that essentially those wireframes, specifically like this one, is like this screen. And for now, if we can just have the 4 buttons to go to the other screens, I think that's a good start. So I'm just going to jump into that. Let's minimize all the art stuff. Let's take a look at the data. So where is the data for this screen written? Where do I write this screen data? So this is a heal menu list. We don't care about the heal. We want to look at the main menu. So in here we have a couple buttons. Okay. So this is has the text heal, and it will take you to the heal screen. And this one's other, and it takes you to the other screen, which doesn't exist. So just to start off here, we could add the 4 buttons. So what did I call out? I wanted to have a skills, items, equipment, heal. Okay. I think skills and heal may actually become one screen in the end, but I'm not quite sure on that one. So let's say that this goes to the next screen, which will be skill. And then this one will be what did I just say? Item and equipment are the next 2. So item screen, equip screen. Okay. And then for now, let's delete this last one. So if we run that, we should have 3 buttons: skills, items, and equipments. It is a little busted because I need to add this last button to the list. Okay. So button, button, button. Cool. So this is my menu list. It just needs to have references to the 3 buttons, and now we can go up and down and even cycle around. Okay. So then we want to go into the skill screen, which I had this heal menu, which I think I'm just going to kind of shelve for now. We're going to kind of just leave that to one side, and we're instead going to create a new skill menu. So in order to do that, let's close out the tile palette because we're not doing any dungeon stuff, so we have a little bit more room to read here. Let's also make sure I can still see chat at all times. Good, good. All right. Seen a couple people trickle in. Hello, friends. It has been a while. I need to make a new screen. So here we can see that I had 4 screens before. We had main menu, unit heal, ability heal, and target heal. And the reason for that was that essentially each state on that heal system, so if we go back to the series of mock-ups, we take a look at the usable skills is what I had called it here. We have character select, where we're choosing a character. We have choosing a skill, and we have using the skill we've chosen ought to heal someone. Technically, in our system, that is 3 different screens because it is all the same UI, but we are when we hit enter on this character, we are transitioning to a new screen, and the new screen has a menu of the heal list, and we're navigating that heal list, and then when we hit enter again, we navigate to the next screen, which is this one here. And this one here, where we're selecting who to heal, actually reuses the same list of buttons that the selected character to choose abilities does, because screens and the components of those screens don't have to be the same thing. It's fine. We'll get to it. It'll make more sense later. It's super confusing as I say it aloud right now, but we'll get there. So, main menu. I need, for my ability screen, which is equip skill, I need this one. So I need the ability to hit enter on the skill button and to have it go, okay, here's your list of characters, and as we go up and down, it shows all the abilities that character has. And then if we hit enter on that character, we will go to this screen, which will basically transition this UI off to one side, transition this side to the left, and then move this UI in from this side of the screen. And then once we're on this screen, if we hit the equip button, whatever button that might be, you can equip and unequip which skills you currently have of it, like attached to that character, and then there'll be a button to go into that skills menu essentially. And what we do is we go into that skill menu, which will be moving this information to the left and this off screen, and then moving all of this on screen. And this is like a node structure for each ability, so every ability has its own skill tree that you can kind of improve that ability, is the idea. So let's start with just the first two. So the ability to go into a screen where we have a bunch of characters, and then the ability to have a bunch of abilities listed on the other side, which is essentially what I had for my heal stuff. So we're going to basically recreate the heal stuff I had. We're going to create a new screen. And because I think that there's going to be a lot of screens in here eventually, I think I'm going to start subdividing them in kind of like folders. So like I'm going to create a new object, and then I'm going to create another object under that, which will be skill screen. Let's go with... Doesn't look like I was using any spacing, but that was getting kind of hard to read. So let's do character select. Character's a bit long. Could use hero instead. Select is... No, let's just do character. It's fine. So character select screen. And what did a heal screen have? That used to have a entity. So we're going to need to add an entity to this thing as well. And this will be based off the convention. Skill screen. You know, let's give it the same name as the object, because that should be a little clearer. And then this thing had a unit select heal screen. So that was a special type of screen we made. Let's duplicate the heal one, because it should work fairly similarly. And then let's go from there. So this is going to be the skill screen character select. And we're even going to do the exact same naming. Not sold on the naming convention, but we're just going to do. We're streaming, we're just going to do. Alright, so we're going to slam that script onto here. It's upset. It's upset because the name was duplicated. Okay. Okay, we'll get into some of how screens work in a second here, but let's just get this set up for working. So slam that onto there, move that up, and so we have our skill screen. Wow, we put our underscore in the wrong spot. Okay. Visual Studio? I was not ready for you yet. There we go. Okay. So once Unity finishes loading all its stuff, we have a screen. And this guy wants to reference two types of lists, a unit heal menu list and an ability heal menu list. I think the same is going to be true for this skill screen, because the heal and the skill were almost identical, which is why I think they're probably going to want to be merged into one in the end. So I think we're going to do the same thing with the components. I think we're going to... We're going to make a new folder. This is going to be the skill menu folder for components. And we're going to grab these two components. We're going to duplicate them. We're going to ask Visual Studio to please stop opening itself, but there's no way I know of to stop that. Okay. And then we're going to change this to be renamed to skill screen character button. And this will be skill screen character menu list. Okay. Swear to God, Visual Studio. Alright, so then we're going to rename this here. And we're going to rename this guy as well. And then we're going to take a quick look at how some of this stuff works. So this menu button is the most basic version. So the menu button is a poolable object interface. So it is basically it can be a series of objects that are pre-stored, is all that's saying. And it is an iScreen component. So it's a type of component in our game, in our UI. And it has a bunch of base initialization stuff. We're gonna kill the HP stacks, text, and the stats. This button likely won't need this information. Maybe we just leave it. Yeah, let's make this simple. Let's not go too in-depth. Let's just use some of these base components, duplicate them around, and go from there. So we've created some new types of scripts. We're going to want to add a new menu that uses these scripts. So the heal menu list was the base one. So we're going to create another object in here. This is going to be skill components. Then we're going to create a empty object under here. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to, again, just duplicate. For the first one here, we're just going to be doing high level kind of creation. And so we'll get into like building a new one from scratch after this first one. So this is the skill. This is the character menu. That's what this is. Instead of this, we want it to be this one. We want it to reference the menu list. And we want it to reference this object as the parent. Okay. So now we have this list. We're going to call this skill character menu. And now this menu just needs to have the pools. Yeah. Okay, so this is a menu. This menu needs to use buttons of a specific type. Hello, Angry Alex. And I hate pronouncing people's names, which is the worst thing as a streamer. I'm sorry, but Angry Alexandria. There we go. It's all one word. I don't know why I was trying to break it up. Okay, so skill. Okay, Alex. Good. So we want to do skill screen character button. Seeing that all spelled out, I now realize I've added underscores in some spots and not in others. Okay, whatever. Okay. I'm getting... It's fine. We're going to suppress the OCD nature and we're going to leave it alone for now. So we have skill screen character button is the type of menu list that this is. It is only having one function it really handles, which is its update loop, which on update, it tries to generate a bunch of buttons out of however many units you have in your group, essentially. This unit data comes from like our back-end system to see how many units you have in your party, and it's going to try and make a bunch of buttons. So we want these buttons to not be unit heal buttons from our pooling system, but instead be the new type. So let's see if we can track down the original prefab for this. It's this guy. And that exists in this front-end prefab folder. We're going to subdivide this further, because again, I kind of built a lot of this at like only one level, but that's going to get confusing as we start going and building more pieces. So we're going to go and make a skills folder. We're going to duplicate the unit heal one, because again, almost everything we're doing for this skill setup is exactly the same as the heal menu I made before. I'm just doing it again. And again, we might collapse heal and skill together, but we'll figure that out today as we work through the problems. So we have a skill button. So this isn't a skill button, this is a character. It's really a skill character button. Skill screen character button. It feels like a lot of words, but we're going to have a lot of things that sound similar, because we might have a, like, really this should be heal screen character button. I guess I was using unit, not character in a lot of spots too. I really need to just commit to a naming convention. Like, it's either character or unit. Full stop. I think the name of the class is unit. So let's start changing things to that whenever we make a new one. I'm not going to go back right now, but we have this skill screen unit button, and if we double click on this, we can kind of see what this looks like in prefab form. We don't want to use the heal menu button anymore though. We want to use the skill screen character button. And as we pass by this guy, we're going to hit rename, and Unity should be able to do most of the magic for us, honestly. Skill screen unit button. And that should just happen here. Yes, it updated in all locations. Good. That this script is used. And then we're going to hook up the button text and the HB text to this thing. Then we're going to save it and leave. Now we need to set up a pool. So we had the unit heal button. Once again, we're going to copy this. We're going to make a skill screen unit button pool. We're going to say this thing is going to have this skill screen button as its thing. It's going to have a ID of skill screen unit button. We're going to have 20 of them created at any one time, which honestly is a little high because you're only ever going to have 8 characters. So maximum object count 8 seems a bit more reasonable on that. Let's go from here. So we have this skill screen button. We have this character menu list. And in here, we now want to load up those heal buttons. So we just decided that this is the object that we want to load. We're going to go into this menu and say, hey, instead of using those heal buttons, load up these skill buttons instead. And we expect it to be a skill button type. That all seems good. Okay, so now we have our screen, which I'm going to get rid of the underscore because I don't think I do that anywhere else. So let's just do this. Skill screen unit select. And then that should get fixed there. And we don't have the ability one done yet, but we did just create this character one. Now, this is going to want to be the skill screen character menu list. And for now, we're going to just comment out the ability menu stuff. Ability menu commented out. ability menu, commented out. Okay, now it's upset about the callbacks because the callbacks is expecting it to accept this type of menu wants it to register a callback with the type of button that was specified in the header, basically. That's what we just did here. So basically my screen logic knows that because you're trying to use this menu system, that when you register callbacks, you should be trying to deal with this type of data. Now we're going to change it to this. Data is a bad name for this. This should be more specific as well. Okay, and then for now, let's comment out the on submit stuff. So we're not going to have the buttons do anything. They're not going to do anything when you select them. Nothing's going to happen when you on submit them. But you should be able to now have this be a screen that exists. So, hey, thanks for the follow. Scenario Byte Offset. Appreciate it. Let's get rid of this ID from here as well. And now in our screen system, we have a screen controller. So if we drag in the global settings as a scene, which is somewhere, global scene handles most of our global managers, and one of those things is the screen controller. Instead of starting with the main menu, could you start with the screen character menu? Does this work? It does not. Bunch of stuff broke. Okay, so let's undo that. Instead, let's try and transition to this screen we've just set up. So we have this new screen. Let's have it reference this menu list. Okay, references have all been set up. Now, when we hit menu button, go to skill screen unit select. When we hit this button, we want to say transition to the next screen of this ID. And essentially what happens is our screen controller just goes, hey, open a screen by ID. And it goes to our entity manager system and say, get me the entity by this ID, get its iScreen component, and then from that screen, as long as it's not null, try and call open on it with any arguments that are being passed in. So essentially, when this button script gets called, if we check to see where this actually gets used, it's in the main menu screen. When on the main menu screen, when you hit submit on one of its buttons, it grabs the button data, and whatever that next ID we've set is, it will try and open that screen by ID. And our entity system that we had added right here is basically saying, hey, this is the ID for this entity, and the screen system uses that ID to find it, essentially, and to try and open this script. So, in order for that to work, though, we need this guy who starts off by default to be turned on. So we've built a simple screen. We've hooked it up to a simple menu list. We've set up that simple menu list to have basically an load up basically the number of characters in your party using buttons that will be pre-generated using this pooling system. There's a lot of boilerplate. But what this allows is very rapid iteration. Instead of having to write a bunch of very custom scripts for all of this stuff, I was able to just like add a couple pieces, and we essentially have the basis of the screen. Before we can finally hit play and see us transition to that screen, though, there's one more thing we need to do, and that's we need to set up a transition. So when we say open a screen, it doesn't just call open. What it actually does is it says add transition sequence, and it calls that on the transition controller, which is a separate class that basically just handles basically animating screens off and on, essentially. So this guy on transition will attempt to essentially figure out what screen we're closing, which screen we're opening, and then find a transition for that combo, and then it will try and play that sequence. Let's just show that. Let's just show how that looks. So we have attached to this guy the screen transitions. These are all the screen transitions we currently have. We're going to need to add a new one, which is main menu to unit select heal. Nope. Skill select heal. And you might notice this is just showing up in this dropdown. This dropdown is actually searching our entire project's like assembly essentially to figure out all screens that reference iScreen. And so because we made this new screen which references iScreen, it just auto-populates in this list for me. So when we're closing this screen and we are opening this screen, we want to have a close sequence and an open sequence that gets played. And a sequence in our system, which is a whole other thing I built in the last few months, then since I haven't been streaming, you guys haven't seen it, but it essentially is a system for allowing us to do different like steps. A sequence is made up of a series of steps, and we execute those steps one at a time, almost like a timeline type experience. Okay, so let's just go from there. So if we bring in the main menu, we have a close menu sequence, which already exists. And if we take a quick look at that, it has two steps in it. Step 1, which is blocking, says fade sequence. So it's going to fade from a starting alpha of 1 to an alpha of 0 over 1 second, and it's going to be fading specifically the entity that is known as main menu. And main menu is this entity. So this is really main menu list, to be honest, but this component will get faded from 1 to 0 when we transition. And so at this point, with only that one sequence set up, just the close, we in theory should see the menu disappear, but nothing up here because we haven't set the open. So if we hit enter on this, it closes, but nothing opens because we haven't set up the open sequence. And if we were to get rid of this close sequence and hit enter, we would see that nothing happens. Because now we are not playing a sequence anymore. So instead we'll do this close. Oh, and the second half, this thing here, this set activity, is just turning the menu off. So we're just basically just doing this after you've faded it off. Mostly so that it doesn't try and do anything funky in the background. Cool. So now we need to set up a sequence for turning on our other menu. So under skill components, this guy, we want this skill character menu to fade up. So let's take a look at open heal screen as a base example. And we're going to call this open skill screen. So this was setting the heal menu to active. So we want to do the same thing, but with our character menu, or with our skill character menu. It was turning on the ability heal menu. Now, can I remove this step? I can. Okay, it removes what I have selected. We don't care about the ability stuff right this second. So let's simplify it down. So this is going to instead turn it on, immediately set its alpha to 0 in 0 seconds. So it's basically just setting alpha to 0. And then it is going to fade sequence the alpha from 0 to 1 over 1 second. To be perfectly honest, if that's what this is doing, this step is probably irrelevant because it should be just setting the starting alpha to 0 as part of this one. So I think this was just me adding extra pieces. Otherwise, I've written bad code and we shouldn't need that in middle step. So either way, we'll check it out. So that fades out. Nothing fades up. because we didn't set up the actual screen. So now if we say open skill screen when we transition from main menu to skill screen, ta-da! Now, it did look like that popped to me personally. That did pop on. So maybe I do need that middle screen one. Let's double check. What was, so it was for heal we're looking at specifically. It was a set active fade sequence step 000 on the heal menu. Start value, okay. Oh, we didn't change this one to fade up. That's what it is. So we just turned it on, but we didn't actually call the fade on it. So if we hit enter now it fades up. Okay. Now whether or not we want it to fade in or fade out or how we want that to work, that's kind of up to us. We can do also tweening on our UI, which apparently is a little busted if the window is too small. So we could instead do also a start position. Let's see, where is the menu currently live? The menu currently lives at... That's the screen. That's the menu. It's currently living at this value to this value. So we could try having it use its default to the starting position. So by ticking this, it'd be nice if my UI actually removed the starting position, because now it won't be used, essentially, because it'll just use the default. But my UI is not that smart yet. But now we could have its end position be... Actually, what we want is the opposite. What I want is to have it go to this value, I would think. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but we're going to try. We want it to end here, but we want it to actually start probably off screen is a way that we could do this as well, which would be like negative 425 or so. So we could do negative 425 and keep its Y position the same. So it should start here and come to here while fading on. And this is a blocking step, so we won't progress until after it's done. Shouldn't matter. Shouldn't need to be blocking. None of the logic waits on the actual sequence. Where did you stick it? Ooh, out here in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So those positional datas, these position values, likely are not in the right context. Interesting. We have an anchor, which can position something next to something else, but we would need the tween to animate its position. Let's do this over 1 second, and then let's actually kind of take a quick look here and just see what is it doing. So if we take a look at the skill component, we're still fading off the old one. We're stepping step by step through the code. Oh. It's now off in the middle of nowhere. Its current position is like 20,000 out. Yeah, it's like way over here. So our tween system is broken a little bit. I feel like maybe taking a small detour here. We don't have to do this, but I kind of want to take a quick look into what's going on with that sequence step. So that sequence step is the tween UI sequence step. So this gives us a good opportunity to kind of dig into what the sequence system itself is doing. Very proud of the sequence system. This took a little while to get right with the help of Too Sneaky, one of the people kind of occasionally helping me. I guess more than occasionally. Yeah, there's Sneaky 1 and Too Sneaky. Those are the names. And they've been helping me on some of the engineering front stuff, doing some pretty crazy stuff that I can't even get into yet, but there's some cool infrastructure stuff in the background and tooling that they've been playing around with, using this project as a bit of a sandbox for themselves as well. And then obviously Drixie's still been helping on art stuff. Where am I going? I'm going to sequences, which is not in the front end stuff, but under the global folder scripts, which I want to kind of break up into more. There's things I want to fix about some of the architecture of these folders at some point. Okay, so we have a sequence. At its core, a sequence is essentially just a class that has a series of sequence steps, and when we invoke the sequence, it loops through those sequence steps and will either start coroutines on those sequence steps if it's non-blocking, or if it's blocking, it will invoke the sequence step and wait for that sequence step to finish before looping to the next sequence step. This is the heart of the whole thing, basically. And so if we take a look at tween UI sequence step, when we invoke this thing, it will set the rec transform position to the starting position if it's not default starting position. And then we try and do a rec transform do tween. Do tween is a tweening library for animating stuff, essentially, and it's trying to tween from the end position, or to the end position, basically, from wherever it was, because we set it here. It basically takes whatever the current starting position and tries to tween it to that end position in a number of seconds. So the sequence step itself is actually pretty straightforward. It's essentially just doing a do tween call. The fact that as soon as we got onto the frame and this start position set happened and it went out in the middle of nowhere makes me think that it's not do tween that's a problem. It's the position data that's a problem. So this is a vec3. This vec3 must not be relative to screen space. So if we set the position to, let's do a small test. If we take a look in the here, and we set this to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and we'll starting position -1, what does that do? Where does that put it in the world? Because I would imagine this would be somewhere reasonable, using much smaller numbers. Okay, it is here. I think this box is our screen, so if we go to game view, yes, it's fading in. Okay. So -1 was just slightly off to one side. So if we did like -5, and I guess the Y value has to be, so 0, 0 is in the center, and if I had to guess, -5 is probably going to be the edge of the screen. So if this is in the center, we want it to be somewhere in the top, 2.5? The fact that the position of the object isn't relative is problematic. Oh, right, I need to set it to a value. So -5 was at there, so -10? Okay, so that works, but the fact that our positions aren't relative to what we're actually punching in is kind of upsetting. Like, I should be able to put in -220, 95 in here, and that should work with our UI stuff here. So why doesn't it? Is it because we're setting position and this needs to be like anchored position. If that works, then this is going to be a problem because this do move is doing like a do move. Can we do a do anchor? Interesting. Could be a do local move. This might fall down on documentation as the actual thing we need to look up. So do tween, do move, rec, transform. You can also do custom tweens. Some people are saying do local move. Okay. Okay, that's worth a try. It's worth a try. Do local move. Okay. And then this was negative 295. So let's do that as our negative position. If we do local move, does that get us where we want to be? 425, 95. It does not, but it gets us closer. So even though we told it to tween specifically to negative 220, it tweened to negative 170. So there's still something off about what object or what position it's tweening to. Now it is worth checking to see does the starting position set work. So if we set this at here and go like that, we would expect on the first frame of movement of this thing that it stays at negative 295. It's been enabled. Okay, so anchor position works in our tween. So this works, this doesn't. Okay. Okay. Good to know. 2 seconds. All right, let's take a look at hack and plan. So this is kind of where we manage tasks for the project at this point. So in here, I want to create a new task, which is a programming. Actually, I can categorize it as bug. Sequence UI what's the name of that sequence step? It's tween UI sequence step. Position, not UI relative. And the description, assign this one to me. The bug for this is that the UI, specifically the do move and do local move in this class does not move the UI element to a position relative to where it from position you would expect from dragging the element to the desired location and copying its position. Replace do move with custom do tween animation. Cool. So I've tasked it. I'm not going to fix it right now, but I'm definitely going to keep track of it for later. So, but small detour into some of the sequence stuff and how some of that stuff is operating. Not too deep, but just a little bit of a look into one of the sequence steps. For now, let's remove the animation of the movement part for now, because it isn't working the way I want. So we'll just have the fade. Just to make sure that we haven't lost anything, we come into here, we hit skill, we open up onto this section here. Good. Now, next step. I think I'd like a title, just to keep track of where we are in some of these situations. So if we go into UI, this thing here kind of works. What was that? Was that this thing? It was. Let's duplicate that and slam that into the skill. Title, background, and then go to scene view. We're going to drag that up in here to the corner. We're going to scale it to like there. Let's make it nice round numbers, I guess. Maybe 25. And then for the text, skill title, background name. This thing doesn't need to live update, I don't think, but we will call it skill title, and we will give it the name skill. Let's bump that up to like 16, which is ugly, but fonts is a different pass for a different day. And then let's on open also do the same thing here. So we're gonna do a set active, which we're gonna do on skill title, and we're gonna do a fade sequence on skill title non-blocking, starting at 0 going to 1 over 1 second. So it should all fade in simultaneously now. We didn't get it. Why did we not get it? This is a skill title. It auto deactivates on start. Skill title, fade up, set active to true. We have to actually enable it, because technically set active could set things active or disactive. So, or inactive. Words are hard. Okay, so now we have this thing showing up. Here are my current characters in my party. with their HP listed next to them. Is this HP accurate? Let's take a look at those buttons. How are those buttons generated? These things refresh, they grab the stats. Doesn't look like HP stat ever gets used. It does not. I must have deleted it when I was messing around. Text is equal to stats. Seriously, did I delete it when I was changing things? I did, and I didn't re-add it. That's all. Okay, so get the stats of that unit, because stored data in this case is a unit. We're grabbing his HP next to his max HP. Okay. And this is just to replicate in like JRPGs. Oftentimes when you have like the character infos, you can see what their stats are, usually in nice fancy laid out progress bars. For now, it's just pretty simple. So now these values should be populated with the actual values of each character, which is 13, 9, and 5. Okay, cool. Let's go back and look at the UI mockup. Art, question mark? Let's do Alt, close, open. If you hold Alt, it'll minimize all folders under. UI, mockups, character select. Okay, so we have some character lists. Now on the right hand side, I want to have a list of abilities that that character has. Let's start with that, because technically I have something like that already working from the heal menu again, so we can kind of do some duplication work. So let's start by duplicating just the components. Let's not worry about selecting into that list. Let's just get it so that this screen that we're going up and down on as we select the buttons will update the list of abilities. So we're going to grab the ability heal menu list as a base, and then we're going to rename it to hopefully something a little bit more clear. So this will be the skill ability menu list. I think what's happened here is that in my terminology, I've been slowly shifting to the idea of skill, but everything in the code still says ability. But I think skill ability is redundant. So in this case, I'm just going to say skill menu list. We're going to turn that on, I think. Oh, we're running. We need to stop running and do all this over again. So this is the skill menu list. This skill menu list is using this heal one, which we're gonna, again, duplicate. We're gonna add this thing to here. Skill menu list will be its name. Rename here. And then we need to do the same thing with the button. So we're going to duplicate this one. Visual Studio is going to open itself. We're going to bring it down here. You know what I can do actually is I can move Visual Studio to the other monitor for now. Go away. Be gone, so that you stop reopening, or at least stop reopening on the screen I'm streaming on. So, and this is the skill menu button. Okay, grab that name, paste this guy right over here, and then we want this thing to use the skill menu button as what it uses in its list of menu buttons. Okay, cool. We need to set up some poolable objects for these new buttons for this new list. So we're gonna go look at the prefab here. We're gonna duplicate it. We're gonna drag it into here. We're gonna call it a skill button. We are going to replace it with the skill menu button. Let's open prefab, drag this piece into there. Okay, drag this piece into here, remove the original one, close, duplicate this guy, skill menu button pool, drag that there. I don't know how many of these I might have on screen at once. I'm going to bump that up to 32 just to be safe. And then we want to give this an ID, which will be skill menu button. And then in here, we're going to go to... We want to replace this actually with the skill menu list. Okay, and then in this guy, we're gonna want to reference this ID as the button to populate with. Okay, and essentially what this menu list is doing is on update screen component, take the data from the unit. Given that unit's all ability specs, it's going to create a button for every one of those abilities and then display it. Okay, just fixing some copy and paste errors. Okay. Good, cool, excellent, great, moving on. So, now if we go into here, we should have that menu component. We now want to add back to this guy the menu, and on select we want to update it. Okay, now this needs to be skill menu list. Skill menu list. And we also need to write a transition, or add to this transition to actually turn that menu on. So same thing we did before. We're going to set active. We're going to set it to true. We're going to turn on the skill menu. Yep. Drag that up to there. Then we're going to do a fade up for that one as well. 1, 1, non-blocking. Okay. A little bit faster that time. Didn't like something. Something broke. This needs to be that object type. Skill. That's what that needs to be. That is essentially grabbing the first unit in the list and updating the list on enter with that button's data. Still not good enough. Okay, what are you broken on now? Same thing. Okay. Skill screen unit button should be an object I can find on this thing. Breakpoint time. Set up something incorrectly. Okay. So this selection is a menu button. That menu button... Can I see... Transform? Who's your parent? Skill screen unit button clone. And you're telling me skill screen unit button clone doesn't have a reference to skill screen unit button. Okay. Unity, come back to me. Skill screen unit button. Exists, and its stored data is clearly something. I exist, Theory Infinity! You exist as well! I'm excellent. It's excellent to see that people exist. Why would this be null? Why? So this line of code is real bad in general, just to be clear. This get components in parent of this type it true so that it gets inactive things, get the first one, and then grab the first one's stored data is a bad line of code. Theory Infinity, I take your typing in chat as a representation of your existence. That could be an inappropriate interpretation of the situation, or an incorrect interpretation of the situation, but I'm going to stand by my theory that you exist. All right, we're going to do a check on skill screen unit button. All right, let's break this one line into several lines so that we can get a better understanding of what's going on. So first off, let's store the button that we're trying to fetch. Now, what do you expect? You expect a list. Okay, so let's grab the list. And then from the list, the first element, we want the stored data, which should be a unit. And we want to pass that unit into the component because we want to update the skill menu with the skills of the first unit, basically. So now, if we put some breakpoints in, where exactly are we tripping up? Where are we hitting a problem? I'm guessing it's on the get list, and somehow I've chosen the wrong class, but I'm not seeing it. So this thing is a menu button whose parent is most definitely, if I can find it, where base parent is a skill screen unit button rec transform. And a skill screen unit button should have a skill screen unit button class on it. This got one object. Okay, so there is an object. Its stored data is guard. So now we have a unit. So now we should be passing a unit into this data. And we hit a null reference. And we hit a null reference on skill menu. I was overthinking the problem. The problem is we never added the skill menu to the class. It wasn't anything to do with the line. So I know I hate that line of code, so I immediately assumed that the line of code I hated was the problem. Also, we made that change while we were running, so that doesn't take. So we got to do it again real quick. Okay. Awesome. So now we can see each ability that each character has in their repertoire, essentially. So at this point, we basically duplicated some heal logic menu that I already had. Let's start making this its own thing. So the difference here for the things that I'd like to add for the skill equip screen is specifically the equip button indicator and a piece of text on the screen that tells you how many equips you have of the total number you're allowed to equip. Let's start with the extra the information on the bottom that tells you how many you have equipped. Because I think that'll be simpler, and it'll also help us dig into what does it mean to have a skill equipped in terms of a code. So let's add another component to the skill components. Let's create a... Let's duplicate the title. Let's also stop running so our changes actually take. Let's duplicate the title. Let's change it to be skill equip count. We're going to move this down here somewhere. We're going to leave pretty much everything the same. The only difference is if we look, we want this value to update, so we're going to want to have it be similar to the info box. So the info box had its own script, which was a update screen component, basically, and it took an ability spec. Okay. So we want something similar. So let's just start by duplicating the info box. This is essentially a component that, like most of the components we've been generating up until now, have been lists, essentially. So their primary function is to generate a bunch of buttons that you can navigate through. This, however, is a situation in where we want to have essentially a bit of information that updates as you navigate the screen, or as you do things on the screen. So this quote-unquote info box will be a skill equip count info box. And it will have just a piece of text, which we will rename to equip count. And it's going to need to update based off of some information. So the ability info thing was taking in the ability spec, so whichever ability you had selected, and then displaying like its name and text about it. I don't know what we're taking in this situation though. I know it's going to need to have this info box object. It doesn't like the fact there's errors. We can just hit save. We just didn't save the file, which is why it's complaining. And then we can bring that over to... Oh, also, I have a question. 1 hour and 20 minutes into this stream. How's the audio quality? I have an air conditioner on the background. I turned the gain way down so that hopefully it's not so audible, but that may have also made me very quiet during this stream as well. But I tried to finesse with it, so hopefully it's okay. Skill equip count info box, which will have a reference to this object. This will be the skill equip count. Seems reasonable. And now this thing will also need to get turned on and off when the transition happens. So this thing, we're going to add yet another set active step. Boop. It's turning it on. Adding another fade step. Doop, doop. And then do the exact same thing. The fact that we have to add each of these makes me wonder if I should make a sequence step that is like turn on. Okay, Theory Infinity says, can hear you fine. I don't even hear the background until you pointed it out. Good. Excellent. I'm glad I've made the experience worse for you. Okay, so the skill equip count. Yeah, I was just saying I might want to make a set active and fade step that is like together, because I feel like I have to keep adding both. And if that's something I have to do a lot, we could just make a combo step. But anyways, point is now we're going to fade this object up. And then we're going to want this screen to update that component, essentially. So we're going to do skill equip info box, skill equip info box. Now what do we, where do we update this? I guess it's on open, because it's gonna be on open and on select, I think. The question is, do we update it with the unit? Does that make sense? Because technically the unit will have a number of equipped skills. That might be where the data lives. Let's work under that assumption. So let's assume that we need to pass the unit in. And this thing accepts unit data as its update. So from the unit, if we have the unit object, can we tell what its equip count is? Current equipped ability specs is a list, and therefore we should be able to grab that list and check its count. And then if we make this string equip count colon end string add this integer for the count, this should tell us how many things this character has equipped. Possibly. And then as we update the store data here, we want to do the same thing here. When we update the skill menu, when we go up and down basically on the buttons selecting different characters, we want to update the skill menu for the different abilities, and we want to update the info count. That should just work. Again, there's a lot of like nuance. I've made this system that has a lot of moving like kind of pieces. There's a lot of tick boxes you have to do things, and it's tedious to kind of move through each of them. But the idea, I have to set a reference. The idea is that once we kind of get used to this system, it makes building new screens much faster, because we don't have to write so much code about like, oh, pass this data in and this function takes this value and using that value do something else. Amorphous just woke up. I forgot when you said in Discord that you were more available in evenings to check on time schedules, on whether or not when you said evening that was my normal evenings or your evenings. Regardless, I've been good. Thank you very much for the 35 months of Twitch Prime and for the kick in the pants. Basically, Amorphous subbed and let me know on Discord that he subbed earlier the week, and I've been meaning to stream for a while. It's been in the back of my head. It's been a couple months now for sure. I've got game dev stuff I'd love to talk about, and in general I just want to hang out with folks. And so thank you for kind of putting in motion the like, yes, now I definitely have to do a stream. So we're doing it. We're doing it. What was I doing? Sorry, tangent. Very good. Okay, Amorphous says that this evening time is my evening time. I was on track, just slept in a bit. All right, cool. So, all right, good. Chat is on fire. We've got 2 people talking. What a world. All right, so we've got our skill thing set up. We just set the reference. If I hit enter now, does this actually work? Hey, equip count appears. I don't think I want it at font size 16, but we've got the data showing up. So now we've got this object. Now, this menu list is kind of a weird size. Is it padding the buttons? It's not. So, and the buttons are aligned upper left. So if I line this count stuff up with the edge of this count here, that would work. Let's take a look at the mock-up. So the mock-up we have for the screen shows that we want to have these things actually be a lot longer, it looks like. The buttons are actually quite small. I don't know, Amorphous, how Amorphous is that? Sorry. It's been a while since I've streamed. Amorphous is saying in chat, are you planning to, much longer are you planning to stream? Like another half an hour or so? At this point, I'm getting into a groove. We're getting stuff done. A lot of the boilerplate, like you picked a good time to join, to be perfectly honest with you. We're kind of getting through a lot of the base stuff, and now I'm kind of just going. So my plan is to just kind of work on building this screen up to try and get something that looks pretty close to this. And I'm probably going to do that over the next couple hours. And then step 2 would be getting it so that after we have this screen, it actually loads up the next one, which is this one here. So moving some things around potentially. So, and then there's a third screen if I really feel ambitious, but we're basically just doing some screen building this evening using this screen system I built over the last few months. So for a while. Awesome. Sounds good. Amorphous will be back. So let's start with trying to size this out to be the same size. So where are my layout? I'm going to bring this over to the other screen, I think, and I'm just going to put that next to chat over here so I can see it. And then you don't necessarily have to, I don't think. But we're going to try and make these things longer. I don't love that every time I add a new element, I'm having to add it to the transition. So I'm wondering if I want to fade up all the elements together. No, I'll leave them separate for now. I will say in this backdrop I have like a scroll list in here. Do I have that already set up as part of this system? This is a vertical layout group, but it is not technically a scroll list. That is a very different thing in Unity. Let's... How accurate do I want this to go? Let's not worry about the scroll. The scroll list is a finicky beast, so we're not going to do that part. Instead, we're going to grab the skill menu button. We're going to drop that into the skill menu for reference. We're going to scale this thing up by going to this one. We're going to give it more width. Yeah, something more like that. We want it to be taking up about that much of the screen, I think. And I think we want to give it a background box. I think we want to create a new image UI, call it background, and we want to use whatever the heck this background is we're using for everything else, which I'm, active character frame. Yeah, okay, cool. Good enough. This is something that Drixie made a while ago for when we were doing the combat UI. Just added it as like a piece, essentially. And I've just kind of been reusing it everywhere. Slicing options all look to be pretty basic on it. Okay, good. That looks like it's getting kind of stretched a bit in spots. Oh, no, it's just because we're zoomed out. We're, like, the screen is small, so we're having to zoom to fit everything. Okay, so then let's get this thing down to here-ish. Now, the question is, this version doesn't have ability information, which is fine because the other one does. When we actually, this is because this is the screen where we're going up